What did we learn yesterday about make it stick? I have to think about that. Studying the testing effect in the wild. That's what we started that section. Okay. So, what was that about? Okay, they go to the authors, Henry Roediger and Mark McDaniel. Yeah, boom. They and their group of cognitive psychologists back in 2005 go to a local middle school, I think, in Champaign, Illinois, and they want to, no, not Champaign, Columbus, Illinois, and they want to start studying the testing effect in actual academic setting in the real world. The principal is like, he's a little hesitant. He's like, if this is just about memorization, no, we don't want it. We're not interested. We're much more focused on higher order skills here. False dichotomy between creativity and knowledge, but that's another subject. Anyway, he's like, ultimately, they convince him. Plus the money, the technology that they're going to be able to bring with the study that the school is going to benefit from, these clickers and smart boards and stuff, convince him to let them come and study. One of the history teachers teaching ancient history is like all for it, and they're ultimately in the study. They do 3 semesters, a year and a half, and they do no changing to the classroom curriculum, no change to the textbook, no change to the testing frequency. All they change is adding these short quizzes into the lessons. And so that's where we got to for testing effect in the wild. Did we also, I'm assuming we read some of the ending of testing effect in the lab, studying the testing effect in the lab. Maybe not. What was the ending of that chapter about anyway? Right, there's a 1978 36-word memorization. We already have studied that or talked to that one. I think that might be it. Everything we covered yesterday. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay, we missed. Well, I missed one thing. We learned about a study that showed the generation effect. This was the 36-word memorization task, I believe, one of them. Anyway, they basically showed in the study that memorization was more effective and retention was more effective when you're memorizing a list of random words, if they just had a few blanks in the letters to make you have to generate a little bit more. So if you're trying to memorize the word shoe, it's like SH blank E, and you have to like generate and put in that O in your mind. So that little extra effort of having to generate the word when it's not completely just given to you leads to better learning, better retention. And the theory or the estimation is based on, or the guess is that the extra mental effort it requires to generate that word that's not completely given to you leads to better retention and learning. So, all right, one more thing. I forgot a lot, I guess. The interleaving part. So they found that interleaving the word you're trying to memorize between other words you're trying to memorize, they found about 20 words led to greater learning rates. And why is that? Well, the authors basically present the idea that maybe this little extra cognitive effort of interleaving, making it more difficult than just mass practicing it back and forth, leads to better learning. But I also postulate that it's the act of pulling things out of long-term memory and bringing them into short-term memory that leads to growth of the development of the neural structures. Okay, that should be everything. Okay, now we're into this testing effect in the wild, and I'm going to read some and I'll be back. All right, guys. So, got through 2 experiments there. The 2006 experiment with the middle school social science. And so, the results of this, here's the study, right? 1/3 of the material is given 3 quizzes in which a teacher assistant has a slideshow with multiple choice questions, and each student has like a remote control essentially that has A, B, C, D, and they click, and then it will show them after everyone's answered the right and wrong answers. So 1/3 of the material is given like a quiz at the beginning of class about stuff they have not covered yet. Then at the end of class, after they've learned about it, and then 1 quiz 24 hours before the final exam. Okay? 1/3 of the material is given 3 quizzes at those intervals. 1/3 of the material is given reviews. So instead of multiple choice questions, it's just a statement on the slideshow at the same intervals. Beginning of class, after class, 24 hours before the final review. And then 1/3 of the material is not given additional reviews in class time. What are the results? Well, first, the shocking result is that the material that was reviewed 3 times and the material that was not reviewed any additional times in class after the initial, teaching, scored the same results on the final exam, meaning that these 3 reviews led to no additional learning or better grades. However, the material that had been quizzed 3 times led to an average of a full letter grade better than the other material, and that is across the average of 3 semesters. So the average grade being a whole letter grade higher. Pretty significant. Well, also at the same time, middle school social science is probably not graded that intensely, right? Most people are probably getting B's to C's at worst. Like, it's not like it's like undergraduate college where everyone's like, there's decent amount of people getting F's and D's, and way less people getting A's. So in 2007, they took it to 8th grade science. So a step up in rigor. 6th grade social science versus 8th grade science. 8th grade science is going to have an average lower grade. So they take it to the 8th grade science. What do they do this time? They just test merely quizzed material and non-quiz material. I think it was the same intervals before class, after class, and then, or beginning class, end of class, and then one day before the final exam. Or was it before the actual unit exam? I don't know about that one. Either way, the material that across 3 semesters of 8th grade, the material that had not been quizzed got an average grade of 79 on the non-quiz material. Okay, C+. What about the material that had been quizzed? The material that had been quizzed 3 times, that scored an average over 3 semesters of a 92%. That's crazy. The average student got a 92% when quizzed, and the average student got a 79% when not quizzed. That's a massive difference. C versus an A, that's a big difference for the average student. So very, very remarkable results on the effects of quizzing. Beyond that, they just mentioned that the material that had been quizzed led to much more durable memories, and that the results transferred over all the way to the final exam, meaning the memories were more durable from retrieval practice and quizzing, and the retention rate was higher. Cool, that's it for those 2 studies. Now we've got a few more minutes. I will be back in a second. Wrapping up. So the teachers at Columbus Middle School, many of them have continued using retrieval practice since these research studies have concluded, finding that it's been very impactful for their students' learning and improved classroom experience. So kind of a point they made was that you don't need technology to practice retrieval or to do retrieval practice. You can just think to yourself, you can write things down, you could talk things out. And then they also surveyed the kids at the end of the study and found that the majority of them actually felt that the quizzes decreased their test anxiety and also increased learning. 89% of the students thought that quizzes increased their learning, and most of them, the majority, found it enjoyable, a nice break and break up from normal droning lectures. You to have quiz games, and that's fun. So that's pretty much it for today. Anything else? So next up tomorrow, we're going to be finishing up this chapter on studying the testing effect in the wild. Looks like they're going to be doing it for university students. So is it going to show the same results for university students as middle school? We'll have to see. Anything else? So today we kind of wrapping up, we reviewed that generation effect study. We reviewed the setup for the 2006 sixth grade social science experiment. We then learned about the 2006 Columbus, Illinois testing effect, sixth grade social science experiment, the results, and then we looked at a 2007 experiment on eighth grade science at the same high school or middle school. We learned that you don't need technology or anything fancy to practice retrieval, and that students actually found the middle school students found the quizzes, the majority of them found it to decrease their testing anxiety, increase their learning, and they found it enjoyable. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later.